Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us for the second session of our marketing and outreach series. This one, we're going to talk about communicating your unique value. I am Rachel Sealer. I'm the Southwest Region Rep for NACD. And with us, we have Laura Meyer. She is with KR Creative Strategies, and she's going to be leading us through this really important topic. So I will hand it over to Laura.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks everybody for joining today. Really happy to be back with you. My name is Laura Meyer. I've been with KR Creative Strategies for the last couple of years. Actually, June is my 2-year anniversary. And actually, the last day of my previous job was with Conservation District employee training in Washington State, where I used to work as a marketing director for their Conservation Commission, telling the story of conservation districts there. And one of the things that I learned was so important in that role, and then in the role I've had since of working individually with conservation districts across the nation, is how important it is to spend time defining and communicating the unique value that conservation districts provide. Um, it's something that can make so many aspects of your job more efficient and effective. It's something that can connect community to your work in a way that is just really meaningful and help them understand what you do and how important you are, which I mean, I think we've all hated saying, and I really don't like bringing up the whole conservation districts as the best kept secret. It's like of all the entities to be a best kept secret, it just seems so silly to me. There's thousands of conservation districts doing amazing work, and even like thousands more folks who are involved in that work. And so hopefully this session and the combination of sessions that NACD is hosting for the Southwest region really help um, that we never have to hear that best kept secret nonsense anymore. So communicating your unique value. Um, so it really gets to any time that you have an opportunity to tell about your conservation district and answer, what it is that you do. It could be a question you get asked in a conversation. It could be when you're filling out the About Us section on your website or your social media account. It could be on a grant application, or when you have a job or board recruitment announcement and you want to present your district in a way that will attract great candidates. For some entities, that can be a lot easier to do. Their work is pretty to the point. Like if you're a public library, you are a public entity that provides a collection of books and media for community members to borrow. If you're a water or sewer district, you're supplying water and sewer needs to a community. But for a conservation district, um, I mean, the diversity of work that districts do, how that can vary from one community to another, from one season to another, from the grant funding available from time to time, it can make it really challenging. And then the other aspect being that a lot of times there are similar missioned entities in your field, whether that's NRCS, a different state agency, an NGO. And so how is a conservation district supposed to differentiate what they do from these other entities serving your community and in a way that really stands out? So I think a lot of times what you'll see if you were to go to conservation districts websites or just talk about or hear about how other districts are presenting their work. Some examples of how we do this is like talking about the history. There's a rich history behind conservation districts. So we might start with that history lesson of being created in response to the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. Or we might unintentionally throw in some vague terms or jargon like technical assistance and BMPs that are really familiar for us that work in this space, but not for folks who are new to conservation and the conservation partnership. I've seen times, and I'm probably guilty of like getting into the statute that created the conservation districts, and even like referencing the exact statute number. We could get into like the structure that we are, the special purpose districts. It's, and then you have to figure out, okay, do we define what a special purpose district is? Talking about being a local government entity, and then that you're charged with managing natural resources. And the challenge is when we start to get into all these different kind of more general aspects of what conservation districts do, all these words start to confuse our audience. And after trying to provide an answer to this question of tell me about your district and what do you do, their idea of a district isn't a whole lot clearer than it was when they first asked the question or visited your website or read your newsletter. So what we're going to talk about today is why and how to define a unique value statement for your district that is clear, compelling, and consistent. And those three elements are such a great test for your unique value statement. It's clear, meaning that it's really simple and to the point. So it's something that you and anyone on your team could easily remember, and the folks who hear it can easily remember too. It's compelling, so right away it should speak to your community's values, the things that they interest, and really draw them in and make them want to care about what you do. And then consistent, so something that you can integrate across all of your materials, all your platforms, and something that all of your team can feel proud stating. So just as an example, if we had a unique value statement for conservation districts in general, like the role that conservation districts play for our nation and territories, imagine all the board members and staff that could be echoing that unique value statement and what power that unified message would have. And it's the same thing at the local level. If all of your staff and board members are saying the same message generally about who you are, and the folks you work with start to use that same language, there's this, once you have that kind of unified messaging, there's a lot less confusion and a lot more understanding of what you do and the importance of it. And that kind of starts to get into why that unique value statement is worth it. I can imagine that none of you out there are very bored. Most conservation districts I've ever worked with, I can't think of one that was ever at a loss of things to do or had more money or people than they knew what to do with. So it's a fair question, like why would you spend time, resources, money, anything like that on creating a unique value statement for your conservation district? And what I would say is defining that unique value statement, it provides a really solid foundation for the success of a lot of aspects of your operations. And it can save you time later on by making those pieces of your operations more efficient. So as an example of that, you can imagine that your conservation district has proactively defined this really compelling statement about who you are, and it provides a very distinct definition of the unique need that you fill for your community. And that statement then is this unifying foundation for your conservation district's work. So then you can imagine that not only do you have this unique value statement, it's also a statement that all of your staff and board members are consistently learning as part of their onboarding. It's helping them communicate that unique value to the community and their important role in it. So you're already building this connection with your team to this unique value that you provide to your community. And then as you have more staff and board recruitments, you're including that unique value statement in those recruitment announcements, which not only attracts people who now better understand the value that you provide to your community, but you're attracting people that want to be part of it. They understand it and they see it as something that they want to be a part of. So hopefully that's bringing in folks that can really add value to your conservation district. And so you also now have a continuation of voices on your team who will be speaking in unison about your district, and that amplifies your message again. That helps with your marketing and outreach. And it can really help things like branding, like once you have this unique value statement, if you're at a place where you're wanting to rethink your branding or rethink your logo, all of that imagery, the fonts you choose, the imagery, the colors, once you know what your unique value is, everything that you build in your brand can reflect it. For example, we've had a lot of conservation districts that we've worked with on unique value statements and branding. A lot of times they come to this sense of being like a connector for their community. So they've been considering like what type of imagery could they incorporate into their branding and their campaigns that really show this role of this hub or connector for their community. So again, that really helps you define and make it more efficient to do things like your marketing and outreach. And once folks have this clearer entry point understanding of who you are as an entity, it makes it a lot more efficient for you to move into the things that you really want to get to, like calls to action to sign up for programs or participate in workshops at your district. So you also can then incorporate your unique value statement or have slight versions of it that you target for decision makers, like legislators and members of Congress and funders or grant applications. And that helps you make a much more compelling case for why your work matters because they can clearly see how what you do provides a public benefit and how public funding will advance that public benefit, which can lead to then more community engagement. And ultimately, that helps you achieve more of your voluntary outcomes on the ground. And it is obviously not as simple as just like stacking blocks into a tower. And I'm not trying to say that defining your unique value statement is like a magic silver bullet for everything that you want to do, but it really does help. Once you have that foundation, it can really help with all these different aspects of your operations, making them more consistent, making them more efficient, making them more effective. And you'll notice that like this image might resemble like a game of Jenga with all the blocks, and if you pull one out, things can topple. It's really without that clear and compelling and consistent unique value message at the base, this foundation of this tower, all the other pieces of your work from the staff recruitment and board recruitment all the way up through community engagement, if you were to lose that foundation, some of that other stuff could wobble or have some major setbacks that you'd have to rebuild. It really, really can help with so many aspects of your work, just beyond thinking about communication itself. So what is a unique value statement itself? What are the pieces of it and how you put it together? So it's really a simple 1 to 2 sentence summary of who you are, of who you serve, and how what you offer fulfills a distinct and unique need in your community. So it's very, externally facing, like who is it that you serve and how do you provide something that they really need and in a way that works for them. And again, to get back to those elements of clear and consistent, it's short and simple enough that you can remember it, and short and simple enough that they can remember it too once they've heard it. And then the compelling factor, it's compelling and unmistakably your conservation district. Another good test, if you've written a unique value statement for your conservation district, is to ask, is this something that could easily apply to any other entity serving our community? So you may have, again, like missioned entities that have a presence in your community, like your partners at NRCS, FSA, NGOs like the Nature Conservancy. If your statement could easily be apply to any of those entities, it's probably not specific enough. it really should be like a fingerprint. This is your conservation district's fingerprint. It's like no one else's. Um, and and that's really what makes it so powerful, and that really gets to the point and the difference between a unique value statement and a mission statement. And that's, I think some of you may be wondering that. It's like, okay, well, we've got a mission statement. What is the difference? A mission statement really is have an internal guide for your organization. It defines the future state that you as an organization are striving for and the mindset that's driving that work forward. So it's more internally facing. Everybody who joins your team is working towards that mission. But a unique value statement, it's more of that external guide. It's defining what makes you different from any like missioned entities in your community and the really distinct value that you provide to your customer. So it's really very customer community focused. They want to know right away, not just the mission or like where you're trying to get to, but they want to know what is it that you offer that's unlike anyone else and really matters to them. And so it's a way of presenting your conservation district to clearly define that for them right up front. So there's a few kind of an equation for like the 5 different elements that make up a unique value statement. The first is your target audience. And I would say the best place to start is with, just really thinking very generally. If you were to have a unique value statement on the homepage of your website, which is, a catch-all for all the folks in your community that you serve, that would be a unique value statement that you would place there. You can also have underneath that umbrella of your general unique value statement for your community, more audience specific unique value statements. So you might end up with a whole suite of them. If you're serving farmers and ranchers, you'd have one for them. If you're serving educators and students, you'd have a unique value statement about the role you play for education. If you are providing more services for urban and residential folks in your community, you'd have a different unique value statement for them. So the target audience is really the first component that drives all the rest of the pieces of your unique value statement. And it's incredibly helpful to have that whole suite in your pocket so you can customize it depending on the specific audience that you're speaking to. So you've got your target audience and then who you are as an entity. So who is your conservation district? Is it a team? Is it a connector? Is it a hub? What are the types of language that you would use, or more importantly, that your community might use to describe who you are in your community? And it's important too to recognize for all of these things, and I'll reiterate this probably throughout today's presentation, that it's really language that your community would use, not that you and your board members and staff might use. So you might use special purpose district. Community members probably aren't going to use that same language. So it's really about how would our community members, how have we heard our community members refer to us as who we are to them in the community? And then there's what services do you offer? So what are the services that are really specific that you offer to this target audience that you are serving? And then how you provide those services. Is it a lot of times with conservation districts is through relationships, trust, connections. It's really defining like how you provide this work, how you provide this service to your community in a way that's different from other entities. And then finally, why do you do this work? What is the ultimate purpose behind it? There is room in there. You don't want to reiterate your entire mission statement in this because again, you want to keep it very, very clear and concise. But there is room to, bring in some language potentially from your vision or mission into this and reflect that as the why behind why do you do this work for your community, and why it matters for the public benefit. So once you have those pieces of language, there's some pretty standard formats that you can plug it into to piece together your unique value statement for your conservation district. And we've worked with several conservation districts to help them put together theirs. That doesn't mean that you could not do this on your own in-house. Some districts choose to work with us. Some districts do it very effectively in-house. It's really up to you. What I have on the screen is some examples of the formats that we showed to a district in Northeast Washington State, Ferry Conservation District, to help them get a sense of how we'd be plugging in this language we were getting from their community to find their unique value statement. So you can see there's different ways you can play with. It really gets down to what feels the most natural to you, or what works best for your community, the person saying it. But it's generally this, there's the Ferry Conservation District is a what. So what is it that you provide to your community as a what for target audience? We're a who, the how, so that why. So you can see, like, once you have identified all these different types of language about the audience you serve, who you are, what service you provide, how you provide them, and why you ultimately do it. There's different ways to plug it into these different formats, kind of like templates for you to write your unique value statement. So I've got a few examples. We'll start with one that's a company that's very recognizable, and then we'll move on to some conservation district examples. So this is from Nikon, the camera company, and this is this is not their mission statement. This is their unique value statement, which is a completely different thing for them. This is really what's how they define their business, how they define how they're different from some of their competitors. So they have, for creative professionals who have an eye for capturing and sharing beauty, Nikon is the leader in optics and imaging that delivers high quality cameras and technology so that you can experience new windows into the world. And so you can see all those pieces are identified. The audience is creative professionals, who they're a leader in optics and imaging, how they deliver, what high quality cameras and technology, and then their why. Why do they do this work? So that you can experience new windows to the world. So again, it's just piecing in. They've identified these different key points of who they are and can plug it into this format. Here's an example from Thurston Conservation District. This is again one that would be more of a general for like their website, for a grant application. It's a little more general for how they serve their entire community. Thurston Conservation District is a hub of natural resource and agricultural expertise for all people in our community. Our local team connects people to free and low-cost services that help them practice conservation where they are, whether on a farm or in a neighborhood, so we all enjoy a healthy environment and local food for generations. So again, the who, they're the hub of natural resource and agricultural expertise. The audience, all people in our community. How, they're connecting people to what? Free and low cost services that help them practice conservation. And the why, so we all enjoy a healthy environment and local food for generations. And again, like some of you may be saying, well, that would not resonate in our community. Exactly, like every conservation district's unique value statement is very different. And like with this one, and we'll talk about a little bit more of some work we've done with districts to make sure that like they're using language from their community. They had learned that a healthy environment and local food were some of the top priorities for their community. There's tons of things that they could say in their opening unique value statement that they do. They do a lot more than what is described here. This is the teaser to get folks interested in learning that whole long list of services they offer. But it's just a very compelling way to get them get them interested enough to learn more. So they specifically are using language here from their community. Their community really valued the free and low cost services that were available to them. Not every community brings that up as the thing that they most value about their district. In this case, it was something that they really valued. They valued that they could apply these services in so many different ways on their farm or even in a neighborhood. So again, like all of this was designed specifically for their community and the things that their community identified as of value about the district for them. So in this example, we'll see how you can have multiple unique value statements. You can have that general one. And then in addition, you can have one for more specific target audiences that you serve too. So this is one, we talked about Ferry Conservation District earlier. They serve a variety of folks, including farmers and ranchers. There's a lot of farm and ranch land in their district. And the way they are going to talk with that audience about their district will sound a little different than when they talk with forest landowners in their district or educators in their district. So in this case, their unique value statement for this audience is for farmers and ranchers, Ferry Conservation District is your local helping hand for natural resource management, including weed control and livestock fencing. Like you, we're dedicated to safeguarding Ferry County's agriculture and rangelands, and our team work one-on-one with landowners to conserve it. So you can see those pieces again, the audience, farmers and ranchers, who they're the local helping hand, what they're offering natural resource management services, and they ended up listing some of the top 2 services that this particular audience really appreciates and values. Why they do it is they're also dedicated to safeguarding the county's agriculture and rangelands, and how they do it, they work one-on-one. And then in this example, this last example, this is another audience-specific statement from Butler Soil and Water Conservation District in Ohio. And they've defined their work here as Butler Soil and Water Conservation District is a local source of natural resource expertise for homeowners in our county. Our team connects you to site-specific guidance for a variety of residential topics, including drainage, composting, and rain gardens, so everyone enjoys the benefits of stewardship, even in our own backyards. So this is another example. They have a general unique value statement. They had several other statements for educators, for traditional agriculture and row crops. But they had in more recent years expanded their role. They're serving a community that's outside of Cincinnati. So a lot more urban area and urban encroachment into their conservation district. And so they've expanded their services and really want to make sure that their community members in that more urban and suburban area were aware of that, and that they had some language that could introduce themselves to that group of folks in particular. So they started identifying, really specifically, what are the type of residential topics we can help people with, are most popular with this group of folks that we're wanting to serve. And just trying to introduce themselves too is for folks who've only ever associated them potentially with farms and ranches that know are actually available too to help you practice stewardship even in your own backyard. This can be a backyard partnership too. So I've got a worksheet for you I sent to Rachel ahead of time that hopefully can help your conservation district write your own unique value statement. And it's to help you start with a word bank. And so it's such a helpful tool. I can't say enough about it. I love having a word bank available when you're doing any kind of writing or communication, or even before you enter in a meeting with a decision maker or anything like that. Is so helpful to have as a reference when you're thinking ahead of time about how you'll present your conservation district. But it's also a great tool for building all of your unique value statements from general to more targeted audience. So this is it's a Word document that you can fill in, and it helps you organize all those pieces: the audience, who, what, how, why. Each column corresponds to one of those key pieces of a unique value statement. And once it's populated, you can kind of treat it like a Mad Lib. So if anybody remembers Mad Libs, I used to do those. I was born in Utah, and we would spend an unreasonable amount of time like driving around on road trips with no air conditioning in our little Ford Escort. And to entertain us, my parents would give us Mad Libs. So that maybe that's part of where this came from. But it's like little stories with blanks and prompts where you fill in the blank with a word. And so it's kind of set up like that. So at the top of the worksheet, you'll see like there's some examples of formats. And know that you're not limited to just these formats. These are just some more of the common ways that you can piece these sections of content together. You're not limited to them, but it can be a helpful starting point. So if you treat any of these formats like a Mad Lib, so you would, with this first one, your conservation district is A, and when it gets to the what, you go down into this column and insert a word that you've heard from your community into what you are for your community. And again, really important here is to use language from your community. It's not so much about having an internal meeting with your staff and board to work through this. It's more about how will you harvest language from your community members that represent all the folks you want to serve. So folks who are brand new, they've only worked with you for a year or two. Maybe they've only attended a plant sale. So folks who have worked with you for years and years, folks who have worked on more urban and suburban projects, folks who've worked on more traditional ag projects, water quality, water quantity, like who are the main types of folks that you serve in your community, and trying to figure out how you can harvest their own language for how they see the value you provide in your community. And that will help you write unique value statements that avoid some of the jargon that we can all be guilty of including in our messaging. But it can also be really rewarding. We'll usually start with a survey. When we've assisted conservation districts with their unique value statements, we'll do a survey that helps us gather some information about their stakeholders' experience with the district. And hearing how your community values you, it's not only great for writing your unique value statement and populating this word bank, but it's been like a real morale booster for a lot of the districts to hear in their community's own words, like, what is that value that you provide? And it can be surprising, like the language that they use, what you mean to your community, beyond like all the technical stuff. It's not just that you're a special purpose district. It's so much greater and more meaningful a lot of times than that to them. And so actually learn what that language is and then be able to describe your district in your community's own language. It's like the difference between, I've been saying this a lot of like, we keep hearing about AI generated messaging and writing. And this is the complete opposite of that. This is your community generated messaging. So you're going to be describing your work in your community's own language. And here's an example from a conservation district that we worked with to administer a survey and try to populate this word bank from the language we got in their stakeholders' responses. So we had asked this group of maybe 20 to 25 folks who had worked with the conservation district representing all kinds of different partners and landowners and community members. Questions about like why they chose to work with the district, after they'd worked with the district, if anything surprised them, why the district offers value to community members who don't directly partner with them on a project. And then from the responses we received, we organized like keywords that they used in their responses into this table. So when they talked about, who the conservation district was in the community, that we had multiple people say that they were a hub or a resource hub for them. They talked about them being a resource center. It was very much this like grounding space where they could go for anything related to natural resources, conservation, agriculture. They talked a lot about the district more in terms of like the people, like the team, they're a team, they're specialists, they're professionals, they're partners. They talked about what, a whole list of services, resources, support, guidance. These are all things that they use to describe what they receive from the district. How this one's interesting. I know a lot of us have avoided using help. That can sound, I think there's a fear that it might sound a little condescending or like you're talking down to somebody. And all the times that we've worked with communities to learn about what they value in their conservation district, I would say help is one of the #1 words that they use and that they value. They value the help the conservation district provides so much. Talk a lot about the help that they get. Again, that connection role, the supporting role, the partner, the trust, and then the ultimate why. Again, this is the one we talked about where like local food was a big value for them. So that's how it ended up as being part of their why in their unique value statement. So local food available for everyone, supporting local agriculture, habitat, a lot of things to do with the environment, making a difference. So these are all just copying and pasting words and phrases that we heard from their community into this word bank that then we can use to build their unique value statement. And underneath the audience, the who and the what and the how, you'll see these descriptors and qualifiers. So these are just the things like they might have referred to them as an accessible hub or a trusted team. So these were all like mainly like adjectives and just the descriptors that they would use when they were talking about who they were. And the same with what, sometimes it was the same type of description, like trusted, and it showed up across the board. Anytime they were talking about what they did or who they were, trusted came out. So just making note of, those descriptors of how, like, how do they describe who they are, respectful, and the services they provide, local, trusted, honest. So you attended last month's session on telling meaningful stories. We had a small section where we talked about questions to help draw out effective testimonials, and it's really the same concept here. So if you're wanting to draw out some language from your community to populate a word bank for your unique value statement, there are some questions that you can use that they'll draw out those testimonials, and they also help draw out some great language for that word bank. So, if you were to just ask, like, who do you think we are as an entity, or what do we offer? That may, like the first question, that might just confuse your stakeholder, or it might just kind of draw out a little more plain answer. So instead, like if you were to ask the question of, other entities in our county provide agriculture and conservation services, what makes our district stand out or different from the rest? You'll later have to go in and kind of tease out where they talk about the who and the what and the why, but it really draws out such more powerful responses and language that then you can use in your messaging later. So these are 4 great examples. I mean, you could add this to like a project evaluation. It could just be in a conversation. If there's folks that come in to your office frequently, like just ask them 1 or 2 of these questions, capture their answer, and plug it into the word bank. You can have that be a living document for a while until you've asked enough folks in your community or received enough testimonials, program or project evaluations to populate it. But even just asking some of these 4 questions, like why did you choose to work with a conservation district rather than going alone on this project, or by working with a different entity. If a friend asks you why you should support or work with conservation districts, what would you tell them? What 3 words would you use to describe your experience working with our district? And that usually all 3 of those words can be plugged in somewhere in that word bank. And then again, what makes your district different from the rest? Those are, pretty simple questions that can really draw out some great language from your community. So again, this is the Word document that we'll send out after the session. But before we move into questions, I guess I would love to hear if any of you on the session today, like, have you ever heard your community describe your conservation district, either who you are, what you offer, getting down to that core public benefit you offer? Is there anything that you've heard from your community that has surprised you or that you've incorporated into your messaging? I'd love to hear that. Is there a way, Rachel, we can capture that through like a chat?
Yeah, if folks want to drop that in the chat, or feel free to come off mute if you'd rather as well. Either way is fine. I know that I have a kind of a funny one. When I was first working with the Purgatory Watershed Partnership, the Conservation District down in Trinidad was the fiscal sponsor for that organization. And there was this one farmer that had been working with them forever, and he was trying to describe the conservation district to one of his friends or something, but he called them the people that know all the things and will help you with all the things. So I thought that was kind of a little bit broad maybe, but it was kind of a funny one, and got people's attention for sure. So does anybody else have any insights onto how other parts of the community have described your conservation district or the work that you do?
And if not, you open up for any questions or comments too.
Yeah, and same thing, feel free to pop off mute if you want, or if you'd rather just type it into the chat, I can read it out for the group, whatever kind of questions you have. I think one thing that's really interesting while people are thinking, that worksheet that you sent out from the first session would be very helpful, I think, to have that kind of not dialed down before you try to figure out your value statement, especially when you're thinking about what kind of audiences you want to reach. That was a really nice one to kind of sort out your audiences. So then when you are ready to put together your value statement, you can have that already figured out. So you're not trying to figure out 2 things at once.
Yeah, it can be a great, for folks who weren't on last month's session, we had shared a worksheet to help you piece together a story for your conservation district and how to translate some of the projects that you've done for your target audience. And so this, yeah, exactly this, this coming up with a unique value statement. Again, like when you're trying to tell a story of a project, you don't want to spend 50% of your time just explaining who you are first. And so it really, these 2 pieces really do dovetail well together, where you can have an idea of a project or a story that you want to tell for a specific audience, and then use a word bank and then one of those formats for a unique value statement, so that you can very quickly within your story present your conservation district and then move on to the story that you really want to tell.
Anybody have any questions they thought of yet? Want to pop off mute? Oh, looks like we have one in the chat. Amber said she had to miss part of it, and did you provide sample statements?
Yes, yeah, and those will be, I sent Rachel slides And we can actually quickly go back here. Provided a few sample statements in the slides. There's one that's a little more corporate from Nikon, where you can see all the different ways those elements are plugged in together. And then I've got 3 different ones from conservation districts in the slides too. One that's more general, one that's for a farming and ranching community, and then one that's more for residential and homeowners in a conservation district's community.
And so you can just jump back with the recording, Amber, if you want to take a closer look at those later. But it's always nice to have an example as well. I have another question. So you talked a little bit about sometimes people want to avoid the word help because it feels condescending or and things like that. Are there any other words that you've noticed that are just not received well when a district tries to put them in their statement that maybe people should steer clear of if they come up in their word bank?
Yeah, I think it would just be things that potentially folks who have worked with you for a long time, you know, they can start to learn the jargon too. So they might start to, you know, talk about like cost share and BMPs and technical assistance, or some of your program names like by acronym. And I would say that's where, you know, just keep in mind that, you know, if you're talking to an audience, a room full of folks, and you know, like, yeah, they've all worked with you for a really long time, then yeah, that could be totally appropriate to use that more insider language. But especially on a more general unique value statement, or with a statement that, you know, is for an audience that you're more recently trying to work with, or that still there's a lot of folks who haven't had the opportunity to work with you yet, making sure that the language is accessible for folks who have never heard of you. And then I would say too, yeah, like I think there's some room to like just be I think when folks have talked about the community-based nature of a conservation district, sometimes that can be a little more effective than even talk, like a lot of times we say local, locally led, local, locally led. Community-based seems to be something that actually resonates really well with communities themselves, and especially as conservation districts have expanded their services so much. I think, yes, districts still work with local landowners, and that's a big part of the niche that districts serve. And there's districts who are doing things like community gardens and doing other more community-wide public benefit level work. So I'm not saying to steer away from local. Local's great. I would just say, and you know, that community-based, community-centered, all that type of language also really feels a little more accessible for all folks to get involved in the work, especially if you find yourself doing projects that aren't they're with landowners and the broader community, or if you're wanting to speak to the public benefit that you provide for the broader community, even for the folks who aren't working directly with you.
Great, thank you for that insight. Does anybody else have any questions? And I'm sure my brain just thinks of things late sometimes. So I'm sure if you think of it, you know, later today or tomorrow or whenever, you can email Laura directly and ask her, or if you want to go through me, you can as well. So just as a reminder, this was recorded, so we will be posting the recording on the website. And I'll also, for everybody who registered today, I will send it directly to your emails along with that worksheet that Laura mentioned. And I also wanted to let everybody know that our next session is on July 10th. And it will be talking about effective communication with decision and policymakers, which, my mind always goes first to, like our big spring fly-in when we all go to the Capitol and work with those folks, which of course that's a very important audience as well. But not only is it those folks, it's your local legislatures, your county commissioners, your city council, whatever, whoever you need to work with, that it's going to be making decisions that affect your conservation district work. So that'll be a really great session. So hopefully you can grab that one, and as always, that one will be recorded as well in case you can't make it. But I want to thank Laura so much for her time. This is a really great presentation, and I think a lot of great actionable items that we can all take away for messaging our conservation district's unique values. So I really appreciate your time, Laura, and hopefully everybody can
Thank
join
you.
us in July. All right, well, thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.